Alright, so we have set up our framework for what we're going to do here. Just remember, the goal of the exercise is to introduce you all to the Cisco Discovery Protocol and its neighboring devices. But before we do that, we will need to configure these interfaces first. So let's move now to server 0 and configure IP address interfaces on this, and we have the IP address across here, which is 192.168.1. Server takes up the second usable host. Its subnet mask will be 240, and its default gateway will be 192.168.1.17. No DNS server on this network. All right. The switch is used as a relay. All right, and we could always go back by the server, do a command prompt, and just do an IP config. And we will see that the IP address and the default gateway is set. Right, so we are in router 0 now. On router 0, we have the interfaces to set up: the fast Ethernet 00 interface and the serial interface. And the serial interface has a clock rate, because this is the DCE end of it. So you'll go to router 0, and we're going to use our command prompt. And from previous classes, we knew that enable is to get us into privileged exec mode, on config T or conf T to get us into global configuration mode, where we're going to set up our interfaces here. The first interface we're going to set up is fast Ethernet interface, fast Ethernet 0/0, and we're going to give it an IP address, which is the default gateway, of 192.168.1.17 with a subnet mask of 255.255.255.240. And you're going to bring up the line protocol by saying no shutdown, or no shut for short. Alright? And if I move away, you would see that the fast Ethernet interface is up. The other interface we want to set up is on router 0 is the serial interface, which takes up the first usable IP address in the 32 network. So I'm going to exit, and I'm going to go to interface serial 2/0. I'm going to give it an IP address of 192.168.1.33 with a net mask of 255.255.255.240. Alright? And then we're going to give it a clock rate, since it's the DC end, of 64,000, and no shot, to bring up the line protocol. I'm going to exit, and I'm going to save the running configuration file. Copy. Before we save the running configuration file, let me just rename the router. So I'm going to go back to conf T, and I'm going to host name R0. Right? And then I'm going to save the running configuration. So I'm going to go copy, run, start. Right? And we finish configure that interface on router 0. It is not going to come up until we put up line protocol on router 1, which we're going to configure that interface. We're going to configure serial interface 2/0 on router 1, and the fast Ethernet 0/0 on router 1 as well, and then fast Ethernet 10 as well on router 1. But before we do that, let me just configure the PCs and them first. Right? So the PC will take up as PC 0, and according to it, will take up .50, .1.50 with a net mask of 255/240. The default gateway, which would be the router's fast Ethernet 00 address, which will be 949. Alright? And PC2 its IP address will be 192.168.1.66. The net mask of 240, and the default gateway will be 65. Alright, let's bring up the interfaces on the router. We have 3 interfaces to bring up on this router here. So we're going to begin with the serial interface. Go to enable and go to conf-t and change the host name of the router here first to R1. Then I'm going to go to interface serial 2/0. I'm going to set up an IP address of 192, which takes up the 34 address, .168.1.34 with a subnet mask or net mask of 255.240. Right? And since this is the DTN, you don't need a clock rate, so let's go no shot to bring up the line protocol. I'm going to exit here, and you're going to see if we move across, you will see that the interface is up. So you're going to configure now interface fast Ethernet 0/0 and then 1/0. So you go to interface fast Ethernet 0/0, and that default gateway is on PC0. So PC0 default gateway is 49. So you give it an IP address 192.168.1.49, the subnet net mask the 240. Right? Then we're going to bring up the interface. Alright? And as we move away, we'll see that the interface is up. So we're going to configure now interface fast Ethernet 1/0, and we're going to give it an IP address which is PC2 default gateway, as you can see below here, 65. The net mask and we're going to bring up its interface. Alright, and we're going to save the running configuration file. Copy, run, start. Alright, and as you can see that the interface of router 1 has been up, fast Ethernet 1.0, fast Ethernet 0.0, as well as the serial interfaces of both routers. Alright, and the PCs are also configured with their IP addresses.